There's a tree growing in tropical regions across 3 continents right now that produces fiber so incredibly soft it feels like pure silk against bare skin, yet so naturally fireproof that open flames simply cannot ignite it no matter how long you try. The fiber grows inside large pods that burst open dramatically when fully ripe, releasing billowing clouds of silky white floss that float effortlessly on the slightest wind like cotton candy spun from pure light itself. Ancient Mayans considered this tree so sacred they believed it held up the heavens. Powerful West African kingdoms built entire thriving economies around harvesting and trading it. Asian civilizations from Indonesia to Japan stuffed their royal bedding exclusively with this remarkable fiber for many centuries before European explorers ever arrived on their shores. The fiber requires absolutely no spinning to become useful. It needs no harsh chemical treatment to achieve its softness. It demands no industrial processing whatsoever because it naturally grows softer than anything human beings have ever manufactured in any laboratory or factory anywhere on Earth. And here is the truly remarkable part. It absolutely will not burn. You can hold a lit match directly to kapok fiber and watch in amazement as the flame simply extinguishes itself. You can throw handfuls of this fiber into a roaring fire and watch it stubbornly refuse to ignite. The natural waxy coating that evolution provided to make kapok seeds water resistant for ocean dispersal also makes the fiber naturally flame retardant without requiring any chemical additives whatsoever. The textile industry spends billions annually adding toxic flame retardants to synthetic fabrics that still burn. They engineered polyester that melts onto skin during fires. They created nylon that releases toxic fumes when heated. They manufactured acrylic that ignites faster than paper. Then they sold these products as superior to natural fibers that had protected humans for 10,000 years. The $500 billion synthetic textile industry needed you to forget that fireproof fiber grows on trees. They needed you to believe that modern chemistry had surpassed what nature provides freely. They needed you to accept toxic flame retardants as necessary rather than evidence of inferior design. They needed you to never learn the name of the tree that makes their entire product category obsolete. This is the story of Kapok, the sacred tree that grows fireproof fiber softer than wool, and the industry that buried it to sell you plastic. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Let's begin. The biology of Kapok explains why no synthetic fiber has ever matched its combination of properties. Kapok fiber is the lightest natural fiber known to science. Each individual fiber is a hollow tube 8 times lighter than cotton. The hollow structure creates dead air space that provides insulation superior to any solid fiber, regardless of material. A kapok-filled jacket weighs less than half of an equivalent wool jacket while providing greater warmth. The lightness comes from structural engineering that human technology cannot replicate. Kapok fibers are approximately 80% hollow space by volume. The cell walls are so thin that the fiber is essentially a microscopic tube of air wrapped in the thinnest possible membrane. This structure evolved for seed dispersal, allowing kapok seeds to float on wind currents for miles. The same hollow structure provides remarkable buoyancy. Kapok fiber can support over 30 times its own weight in water. A life jacket filled with kapok keeps an unconscious person floating face up automatically. The buoyancy persists even after prolonged submersion because the waxy coating prevents water absorption into the hollow cores. And the waxy coating provides the fire resistance that synthetic manufacturers cannot match. Natural waxes covering kapok fiber have ignition temperatures far above typical flame exposure. The wax does not melt and drip like synthetic materials. It does not release toxic fumes when heated. It simply refuses to catch fire under conditions that would ignite cotton, wool, or any synthetic alternative. The softness exceeds any fiber humans have manufactured or cultivated. Kapok fiber diameter measures approximately 20 microns, similar to the finest cashmere. But, unlike cashmere, kapok has no scales or barbs that can irritate sensitive skin. The smooth surface feels like silk while providing insulation like down. Babies wrapped in kapok sleep better than babies wrapped in any synthetic material. No laboratory has ever produced a fiber combining these properties. The synthetic industry has spent decades and billions of dollars attempting to engineer what kapok provides naturally. They have failed. Their products remain heavier, less insulating, more flammable, and less comfortable than fiber that grows on trees throughout the tropical world. The history of kapok use spans every civilization with access to tropical forests. Archaeological evidence confirms kapok harvesting in Mesoamerica dating back at least 10,000 years. Mayan artifacts include kapok fiber preserved in ceremonial contexts. The Mayans considered the kapok tree sacred, believing it connected the earthly world to the heavens. The massive trees reaching over 200 feet tall with buttressed roots, spanning 30 feet, seemed to ancient eyes like pillars holding up the sky. The Mayans used kapok fiber for purposes remarkably similar to modern applications. They stuffed bedding and cushions with kapok floss. They used the buoyant fiber in flotation devices for river crossings. They valued its softness for infant care. They understood through observation what modern science has confirmed through laboratory testing. West African civilizations built sophisticated Kapok trade networks. The fiber moved along trade routes connecting forest regions to savanna kingdoms. Kapok stuffed mattresses and pillows indicated wealth and status. The tree itself held spiritual significance across multiple cultural traditions, from Senegal to Congo. Asian civilizations independently discovered Kapok's remarkable properties. Indonesian kingdoms harvested Kapok for export to China and India for centuries before European contact. Japanese craftsmen prized Kapok for traditional bedding called futons. Vietnamese and Thai cultures integrated Kapok into traditional medicine and spiritual practices alongside practical applications. European colonizers initially dismissed Kapok as inferior to familiar fibers. They arrived with preconceptions about cotton and wool as proper textile materials. A fiber that could not be spun into thread seemed useless to cultures that measured value by weavability. They missed entirely that Kapok excelled in applications where spinning was unnecessary. The dismissal delayed European adoption by centuries. While Asian manufacturers stuffed mattresses with Kapok that Europeans shipped to Asian markets, European consumers slept on inferior materials. The cognitive blindness of assuming unfamiliar meant inferior cost generations of comfort. The 20th century brought brief but significant recognition of Kapok's strategic military importance, followed by deliberate commercial suppression once peace returned. World War II transformed Kapok almost overnight from exotic tropical curiosity to strategic military necessity of the highest priority. Life jackets for naval personnel required buoyant filling material that absolutely would not absorb water even after hours of ocean submersion. Flight suits for bomber crews needed insulation that weighed almost nothing, yet provided warmth at 30,000 feet altitude. Sleeping bags for infantry demanded maximum warmth with minimum bulk for soldiers, carrying everything on their backs. Kapok met every single one of these demanding military requirements, better than any alternative material available anywhere in the world. The United States military consumed millions upon millions of pounds of Kapok fiber annually throughout the entire duration of the war. Navy life preservers relied entirely on Kapok's extraordinary buoyancy to keep wounded and unconscious sailors floating face up in the water until rescue arrived. Army Air Corps flight suits incorporated Kapok insulation throughout to prevent deadly hypothermia during long bombing missions at extreme altitudes where temperatures plunged far below zero. Field equipment ranging from sleeping bags to medical stretcher padding to equipment cases incorporated Kapok filling, wherever the combination of lightweight and superior warmth actually mattered for soldier survival. The Japanese military capture of Southeast Asian Kapok-producing territories created immediate crisis throughout American military supply chains in early 1942. The same territories that produced rubber and tin also grew the Kapok trees that American military equipment required. Military planners scrambled for alternatives, eventually settling on milkweed as domestic substitute, while fighting to recapture Pacific territories, partly to restore Kapok supplies. The war demonstrated conclusively that Kapok outperformed every alternative. Military testing compared Kapok to cotton, wool, down, and early synthetics across every relevant measure. Kapok won on weight, buoyancy, insulation, fire resistance, and durability. The data filled classified reports that shaped military procurement for decades. Then the war ended and the synthetic industry launched. DuPont and other chemical companies had developed synthetic fibers during wartime research. They had factories built, production lines ready, and investors expecting returns. They needed markets that natural fibers currently dominated. The marketing campaign that followed rewrote public understanding of textiles within a single generation. Synthetics were promoted as modern, scientific, superior. Natural fibers were framed as primitive, outdated, inferior. The messaging never mentioned that synthetics burned while Kapok did not. The messaging never compared insulation values or weight. The messaging simply repeated that new meant better until consumers believed it. The modern suppression of Kapok operates through economic structures rather than active conspiracy. The synthetic textile industry generates over $500 billion in annual revenue. This revenue depends on consumers purchasing manufactured products rather than harvesting natural alternatives. Every pillow stuffed with polyester fill represents profit. Every pillow stuffed with Kapok represents revenue lost to a tree. The industry has no incentive to inform consumers about Kapok. Marketing budgets promote synthetic products exclusively. Retail channels stock synthetic options while Kapok remains unavailable. Consumer education emphasizes synthetic brand names while natural alternatives go unmentioned. The fire retardant chemical industry adds additional suppression incentive. Synthetic fabrics require chemical treatment to reduce flammability. The chemicals themselves represent a multi-billion-dollar industry. Products that burn poorly create demand for products that prevent burning. Kapok eliminates both problems and both revenue streams simultaneously. Regulatory frameworks have been shaped by industry influence. Fire safety standards specify chemical treatments rather than natural fire resistance. Building codes require flame-retardant chemicals and furnishings without acknowledging that natural kapok meets safety requirements without chemicals. The regulations assume synthetic materials and mandate chemical solutions to problems those materials create. The resulting market structure makes kapok commercially invisible. Consumers cannot buy what stores do not stock. Stores do not stock what wholesalers do not distribute. Wholesalers do not distribute what manufacturers do not produce. Manufacturers do not produce what industry infrastructure does not support. The entire supply chain excludes kapok by structural design. Small producers maintaining kapok traditions cannot compete with synthetic industry scale. A village cooperative harvesting kapok from traditional trees cannot match marketing budgets of multinational chemical companies. Their products remain confined to local markets and specialty niches, while synthetics dominate global commerce. The environmental comparison between kapok and synthetic fibers reveals what industry marketing conceals. Synthetic fiber production consumes approximately 70 million barrels of oil annually. The petroleum becomes polyester, nylon, and acrylic through energy-intensive chemical processes. The manufacturing releases greenhouse gases and toxic compounds. The products eventually become microplastic pollution that contaminates oceans and enters food chains. Synthetic fibers shed microplastics with every washing. A single load of synthetic laundry releases hundreds of thousands of plastic particles into wastewater. Treatment plants cannot remove particles this small. The microplastics flow into rivers, lakes, and oceans where marine life ingests them. The plastics bioaccumulate up food chains until humans consume them in seafood. Kapok production requires nothing but harvesting what trees produce naturally. No petroleum, no chemical processing, no energy-intensive manufacturing, no toxic emissions, no microplastic pollution. The fiber biodegrades completely when discarded. The trees sequester carbon while producing fiber. The environmental profile could hardly differ more dramatically from synthetics. Kapok trees provide ecosystem services beyond fiber production. The massive trees support diverse wildlife communities. Their flowers feed bats and birds. Their canopies shelter countless species. Their root systems prevent erosion and maintain watershed health. Harvesting kapok pods removes nothing that the tree needs to survive and reproduce. Synthetic production provides no ecosystem services whatsoever. Oil extraction destroys habitats. Refineries pollute communities. Chemical plants generate toxic waste. The entire production chain extracts value while degrading environments. The comparison is not close by any measure. The industry that buries kapok also buries these environmental comparisons. They fund sustainability reports that never mention natural alternatives. They sponsor environmental initiatives that address symptoms rather than causes. They promote recycling programs that cannot solve microplastic pollution. The greenwashing deflects attention from solutions that would eliminate their revenue. The practical applications of kapok extend to nearly every use currently dominated by synthetic fills. Bedding represents the largest potential kapok market. Pillows, mattresses, comforters, and mattress toppers currently use polyester fill, memory foam, or other synthetic materials. Kapok provides superior comfort, better temperature regulation, and natural fire resistance without chemicals. The only barrier is availability created by industry-controlled supply chains. Outdoor gear benefits enormously from kapok properties. Sleeping bags filled with kapok provide warmth at lower weight than synthetic alternatives. Insulated jackets using kapok compress smaller and loft better than polyester fills. The natural water resistance reduces problems from moisture in outdoor environments. Marine applications showcase kapok's unique buoyancy. Life jackets, flotation cushions, and boat fenders work better with kapok than any synthetic alternative. The natural fiber does not degrade from saltwater exposure. It maintains buoyancy indefinitely without the chemical breakdown that affects synthetic foams. Acoustic and thermal insulation applications remain largely unexplored. Kapok's hollow fiber structure provides excellent sound absorption. The same structure creates thermal insulation superior to fiberglass or synthetic foam. Building applications could replace toxic insulation materials with natural fiber that actually performs better. Infant products represent perhaps the most compelling application. Babies benefit from kapok's hypoallergenic properties and supreme softness. Parents benefit from fire resistance without toxic chemical exposure. The developing bodies most vulnerable to synthetic chemical exposure could instead contact only natural fiber that humans have used safely for 10,000 years. The kapok trees growing wild and cultivated throughout tropical regions of Asia, Africa, and the Americas represent natural abundance that industry marketing has deliberately rendered completely invisible to modern consumers. The trees produce fiber-filled pods annually without any cultivation, fertilization, irrigation, or human intervention of any kind. Wild kapok trees in forests and planted kapok trees on farms yield fiber that requires only harvesting. The trees live for centuries, producing fiber year after year without replanting. The abundance is structural and permanent for any community with access to tropical climate. Traditional harvesting knowledge persists in communities industry has not reached. The Indonesian villages still harvest kapok using techniques unchanged for generations. West African cooperatives maintain kapok traditions alongside other forest products. Latin American communities remember what their Mayan ancestors knew about the sacred tree. This knowledge waits for global rediscovery. The synthetic industry hoped you would never learn what kapok provides. They hoped the name would remain unfamiliar. They hoped fire-resistant fiber growing on trees would seem impossible rather than obvious. They hoped their marketing would permanently overwrite 10,000 years of human knowledge. They did not anticipate that information now spreads through channels they cannot control. You now know that fireproof fiber softer than wool grows on trees throughout the tropical world. You know that synthetic alternatives burn, melt, release toxic fumes, and shed microplastics. You know that the industry selling you these inferior products deliberately buried knowledge of the superior natural alternative. The question is, what you do with this knowledge. Every pillow purchased with synthetic fill supports the industry that buried kapok. Every sleeping bag bought with polyester insulation funds marketing that keeps you ignorant. Every choice has consequences that extend beyond personal comfort to environmental impact and industry power. Kapok products do exist today for consumers who know to search for them specifically. Small producers, especially retailers and traditional craftspeople, maintain supply chains outside industry control. The products cost more than synthetic alternatives because the supply chain lacks industrial scale. But the cost reflects true value rather than subsidized petroleum and externalized pollution. The sacred tree of the ancient Mayans still grows abundantly throughout tropical forests today. The silky fiber still floats from opening pods every harvest season just as it has for millions of years. The remarkable softness still exceeds anything laboratories have ever created despite billions spent trying. The natural fire resistance still requires absolutely no chemical additives to achieve what synthetics cannot match, even with toxic treatments. $500 billion of annual synthetic textile industry revenue depends entirely on you never learning any of this information. Now you know what they buried so carefully and exactly why they worked so hard to bury it from public awareness. If this opens something important for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every single like and share helps spread what the textile industry tried so hard to hide. See you in the next one.